Hello, everybody. How you doing today? This is Sakoni Prince, and I am again excited to be able to bring to you our podcast, which is entitled "Heal, Help, Elevate, and Learn," and it's based on my book. Actually, they came in. They came in. They are here. They are here, and they're available for sale on Amazon. But the book is entitled "Heal, Help, Elevate, and Learn: A Guide for Healing Your Inner Child." And I am so excited because I get a chance to share with you somebody who has been phenomenal in impacting my life and just really helping me look at myself in a totally different light. For those of you who don't know, I am a motivational speaker, and I start off doing personal development and leadership development. But one of the things that I quickly learned is that there was an aspect of our personality that was being overlooked, and that was our inner child. And that's what really led me to write the book and to actually start this podcast. And again, I want you to understand that this podcast is to start the conversation. I really want us to take a moment to actually look at who we are and what made us that way, our childhood, and those things that are still affecting us today. And so, with that being said, I really want to tell you that we also have a sponsor for this event, for this podcast, and it's none other than BetterHelp. So, check out the ad for them. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SakoniPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable, it is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SakoniPrinceHeal or choose Sakoni Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. So you can understand why I am so excited to have somebody come alongside and help me to help you. And BetterHelp is an amazing organization. I am so grateful for their sponsorship. Well, listen, I don't want to actually keep you waiting, keep you chomping at the bits. I want to bring on screen right now none other than my good friend, Dr. Charles Dent. Dr. Dent?
Yes, sir. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast. I love the fact that you always want to introduce ourselves so that we can become the better version of ourselves. You know how I sometimes just call your phone just to hear your answer machine. So you pick up, I say, I need you to pick up. I just wanted to hear the intro. So yeah, I really appreciate it, Sakoni, and thank you for inviting me to be here today.
Well, you are quite welcome. Thank you for coming in. And actually, and see, you are one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that I had professionals, people who are trained in this area, to come in and put a framework around some of the stuff that I talk about in my book. So, yeah, well, first of all, tell people a little bit about yourself and why you are qualified to actually talk about mental health matters.
Well, I'm first of all, I am a veteran in the military. I was Marine Corps, and when I was there, I was a career counselor. My last few years in the service, and when I went to went to college, I wanted to do more. And then when I got into the church, they used to tell me I didn't really need the license because we were in the nonprofit umbrella. And I found out there was much more to it than just saying we're going to be great counselors in the church and not understanding all the different scopes of practices, different approaches to therapy. And so what I did, I just dove more into it. When I got my doctorate degree, they was talking about integration of care, but that was not a famous thing back in the time when I first got my doctorate. Later on, it became a big thing that we have the integration of care because some people want to address their faith in their treatment. And then you have clinicians who never been trained in a particular area of addressing people's faith. And that's not a requirement in a lot of settings. But then you on the other part, you have a bunch of clergy understanding the mental health piece. So I became like the bridge between the two, the clinicians and the clergy in the community. I'm all about prevention, intervention. At the same time, I do see clients, and I love it. I love being able to help people navigate through things, do counseling, things of that nature. I mean, it's been really, really fun the seeing the transformation of people's lives. This year, August, the first week in August is my 40th year in ministry. I was telling somebody the other day, I want to write my pastor who licensed me and say, hey, I celebrate 40 years this coming August. And I love the work that we do, dealing with the intervention of care. And I love your book as well, that, because healing that inner child is so important that sometimes, because we talk about trauma, and we address that in so many ways. So I've been doing this around. I have written books, and really, my next book is probably come out around July. I did a lot of research on this last book. It took me 2 years to write it. So, so I'm looking forward to releasing it sometime in July. So.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who don't know, Dr. Dent was gracious enough to write the foreword for my book. And that's one of the things that I appreciate him for doing that, because, again, just having someone of his caliber, and I'm not even going to say co-sign, but just put a stamp of approval on the direction and the passion behind, again, starting the conversation about inner child trauma, inner child wounds, and how do we hear from them? One of the first things we have to do is we have to actually acknowledge that they're there, and then we can start addressing them. So I have a question for you, Dr. Dent.
Mm-hmm.
In your professional opinion, how important is inner child healing?
Well, let me say this to you. There's my approach to this is because of the attachment theory, that if a child at the age of 1 or 2, if not bonding with the mother or the father, it's a good chance that they're going to deal with some detachment issues later on, or they're going to feel abandoned. A child needs to feel the want. They need to feel safe. They need to feel the heartbeat of the mom and the dad in their lives. So if they don't have that, later on, between ages 3 and 4, they start to develop memory. And then their memories start reflect on things like, my mom wasn't there, never remember the hugs and everything of that nature. So then later on, they end up in risky behaviors, whether it's sexual, whether it's drugs or alcohol, because they're trying to fill in that void that the inner child didn't receive. Now, I love the book. I just love the book. And I want to plug the book even more because I love how your approach was. I said, oh, man, this is really, really good. So, and I think sometimes we don't know how to heal, because as a child, we don't know the language of trauma. We don't know the language of abuse. We don't know what neglect is. We don't know what abandonment is. But those things start to show up in our adulthood, and they start to shape our behavior. I think this is so important that we are able to address that inner child. Now, I have clients, I told them, you're going to have to learn how to reparent yourself. You're going to have to learn how to reparent the inner child, because that was not parent for it.
And it's funny that you mentioned it, because in the book, there's a quote that says it's never too late to have a second childhood.
Right.
So when you talk about reparenting yourself, and again, this is one of those areas that I didn't quote unquote study upon from a scholarly standpoint, but I know how important it is for us to minister to ourselves and to actually deal with that inner child version of us, to help them heal. I mean, really and honestly make peace with them, check on them, make sure that they're okay, because honestly, that's the fun part of us. That's the creative part of us. That's that side of us that is really adventurous, And so having to actually be able to reparent ourselves, as you say, or in my case, have that second childhood. To me, it's so critical to a happy and a whole life. Some people are so quick to grow up that when they get there, in fact, they want a do-over. But when you understand that your childhood is still showing up in your life, why not have it show up in a good way? In fact, where you're adventurous and in fact, where you're fun. So,
Coney, but you think about children, they're so curious. And we lose curiosity when we become adults. We used to so curious, like why this happened? Why what's this? And so what parents do at times, because sometimes parents have difficulties addressing the curiosity of the children, sometimes don't know how to expose them to what they're curious about. And so we shut it down because I ask all these questions like, what, like in church, why do y'all raise y'all hand in church when the preacher raised their hand? I mean, I used to ask all these questions. Why? I was curious, but they used to kill my curiosity. Think I was just being rude or disrespectful. I don't know what rude and disrespectful is. I just know I was curious.
Right.
And so I think sometimes, as that child is, how do I reparent myself is rediscovering my curiosity. And I think we miss that as a children, and we lose that as adults because we become so business savvy about everything that it's all about business, and we lose that curiosity. So,
Right, and that is so true. So, when do you think someone who's dealing with inner child issues, like when do you think that work needs to start?
Okay, by research, Sakoni, it takes on the average of 10 years before somebody recognizes they have some childhood trauma.
Wow, 10
That's
years?
on the average. On the average. I had one guy sitting in my class one time, and he said it took him 35 years to recognize these things that happen in his life.
Wow.
Sometimes they happen better when somebody else suggests them to get some help. Now, it's not like sometimes we're in denial. Sometimes it's ambivalent. Just, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be doing that. We really don't know where to go, what to do. And, people say I live in denial that this really exists in my life. I wasn't living in denial of it. I just didn't have the language to link it to my inner
Right.
childhood.
Right.
And I think that becomes so important that we help people look at the language in which they have given it.
Okay. Explain that a little more.
You wrote it in the book.
I know. I want you to. I'm here to say, I'm here to get an expert.
You put it in the book. Come on, Sakoni.
Come on, man. I want
if you go back and read your book, get the book. Come on, Sakoni. Get the book. Get the book. You told me we're gonna keep this on a layman's term. Get the book. Buy the book on Amazon. Buy the book. Write Sakoni Prince. Go to sakoniprince.com/heal and get a copy of the book. It is really, really thorough. And I say it not from a therapeutic perspective, not having research behind it. It was on point.
Well, thank you. And again, I'm humbled by that, but I'm also excited because I honestly believe it's going to pull the curtain back on, again, a lot of issues that people are having today, stuff that's showing up in their behavior, but they really don't know what to call it. They just say, well, that's just where I am. And, like I've said before, it's not what you do, but why you do it. And being able to actually connect stuff that happened in their childhood with their behavior today, it gives them a reference point. And if it's something that's negative, okay, in order for me to fix my behavior today, I need to deal with what happened back then. And I'm not saying use it as an excuse. Some people want to do that.
Yeah, and you're on point with that. I have gotten away with my behavior all these years, so why do I need to fix it now?
Right.
Right. And I think I want to say something. I think one of the hardest things, this is something I read, one of the hardest things in the world is that we trying to be right, but being right is still hurting other people. Because we don't want to address some of the things that we have encountered. Now, I'll tell you this, it took me a while before I recognized that PTSD was really harming me in relationships. Because I didn't really know how much I was dealing with depression as a pastor. Because pastors behind the sacred desk should not be struggling with mental health issues. But we are, because we fail to recognize, we're human. I was telling someone today, I said, I'm really sharing this with you, Sakoni, about embracing the humanity of who we are. I was telling them about the cross. I was telling them about the two thieves, one thief on one side, one thief on the other side. And I was having this conversation and we can link this to inner childhood healing, because I failed to tell someone I'm hurting. And so we don't embrace the full humanity of Christ, that you got thorns in your head, you got blood coming down, you got nails in your hand, all the pain. It's because someone told us not to be human.
Wow.
Someone tried to program us not to feel pain. And sometimes religion can be the enemy of it all, because it told us that God should give us a magic pill and the pain will go away. But that's not embracing the full humanity of Christ. It's not embracing the full humanity of who we are, that we do have pain, that we do cry, that we do get angry, we do get frustrated, we do have disappointing times in our life. Now, we have a lot of joy and excitement about things, but we go back to the inner childhood trauma and things. Those things are reoccurring, reciprocal things that are happening, that reoccurring from childhood. If the Bible is true about there's nothing new under the sun, because every experience created an emotion.
Right.
I mean, life, someone's born, my child. Someone dies, it creates emotion. Every experience creates an emotion. And sometimes we fail to really see that little child, that little Charles crying over the fact that he couldn't get a pair of shoes. My mom used to always, like, if you go meet my mom right now, she's going to tell you that incident that happened on Broad Street in Augusta, Georgia, when I wanted some stack heels. She'll tell you that story. And it's like, she'll tell you, she tells everybody that story when he was a child. And I'm going like, because I thought something was wrong with my height. My brothers and outgrowing me, they 6'2", 6'4", and I'm just 5 feet something. And I'm like, what's going on in my life? So I wanted to add some stack heels, and my mom tell you this story. But I cried because she wouldn't buy me in.
Wow.
Because I felt like there was something wrong with me because I wasn't growing. And it made a joke of it. But that hurt.
Wow.
So the things that we think being right, even being right can hurt people. And then we fail to see the childhood trauma and the childhood experiences. And so we can trigger people, and we can trigger these things with stress. And stress is the thing that triggers them.
Right.
So, yeah, I just get the book. If you haven't read Saucony Prince's book, I suggest you get it.
This is my pitch, man, okay? He is pitching the book, and I appreciate him for that. But Dr. Dent, I want to go back to something we talked about, in fact, when we had lunch earlier, in fact, this week, where you helped me to understand something that I really hadn't drawn the connection to, and that is that even as children, we don't have the vocabulary to describe what we're feeling or what we're going through.
Yeah.
And it's not until, in fact, we become an adult that we have, in fact, developed enough to be able to articulate that. And that was real telling to me, because I never really thought about it like from a child's perspective. When they're going through, they're just experiencing something and they have emotions around it, but they really don't know how to frame it up, how to package it, and how to tell somebody, what it is they're dealing with, especially if it's, if it's not anything that is obvious. And so I thought that was and it was an amazing revelation for me that as a child, you don't have the vocabulary to really fully articulate what it is you're experiencing and going through, but it's there and you remember it. It's not until you get older, in fact, that you're able to kind of, and I don't even want to say label it, but just, again, frame it up to say, this is what happened to me and this is what I was feeling.
Yeah, because think about it. If most of people, especially Black men, were misdiagnosed, it's ADHD, this hyperactive child. So we want to put them on medication to calm them down. Now, what in the world? The child doesn't know what that is.
Right.
But they want to diagnose this child, put them on medication, and realize this child may think they're entitled to certain things because the parents have given them everything. And so we don't know the history. We don't study the history because, I watch people, just in a diagnosis. I mean, you just This person just came in for 50 minutes or 2 hours, and you say, I already figured out their diagnosis. Come on. Shouldn't it take a little bit longer than just 2 hours to do an assessment and then to do a diagnosis? You haven't even built rapport with the person, because I would always put on my best outfit when I first come to the interview.
Right.
But who am I once the interview is over? So those type of things, I don't think we take in consideration that if I'm dealing with any trauma, because I told this one church, I sent them a letter, Sakoni. I made a recommendation that before you bring on your next pastor, make sure they can be assessed to see whether or not they have any mental health challenges, so they can work out things in their lives. Because you don't want to continue to have this revolving door that people have in churches because they don't do the assessment or they don't ask the right questions.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you heal that inner child? Imagine that's part of the assessment. Imagine that's part of the interview process when you interview a pastor. Tell me about the processes of your relationship with your dad. Because I asked this one person, I asked him one question: tell me your relationship with your dad. That's all I asked. And next thing you know, he was extremely angry and so frustrated about he couldn't explain that he had a healthy relationship with his dad. And I knew then he was dealing with some childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't have the language. Children, even our IQ or EQ, our emotional intelligence, cannot say, don't have the language. Just like a child said, oh, they just start crying and they point out their need. They don't realize the pain. They just know they're hurting. Because I remember when my son had the chicken pox, he had him, and he couldn't talk. He couldn't tell me he was hurting. Because he didn't have the language for it. He wasn't even talking. I just knew his crying, his tears. I had to get the best I can, getting into the doctor, doing everything I could do to help him, because he didn't have the language. And I think that's where we fail. Because we say this in trauma. It's not what's wrong with you. It's what happened.
Wow. Well, again, I know that we have to take the time to step back. And I keep saying this, if you are having behaviors that are impacting your life, your job, your business, your relationships, your goals, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, if there are things that just keep showing up, they keep reoccurring, it may be good to step back and see why. And I love what you said earlier. And I was going to say something that a good friend of mine said. It was that part. In order to get the right answers, you have to ask the right questions. And oftentimes people aren't asking the right questions of themselves. They're asking the right questions of everybody else, but they never ask the right questions, the hard questions of themselves. And so understanding the environment and how critical that was in your in fact developmental process, and how if something in that environment was wrong, if it was off, if it was negative, that can again leave a wound or a trauma. Speaking of which, can you explain the difference, in your opinion, the difference between a wound and a trauma?
Okay, a wound. Okay, first of all, trauma is related to some kind of traumatic event that happened in a person's life, and in their response to that trauma, because everybody can have the same experience, and their response to it is totally different. A wound is based on what you want to look at. It's like, is this an emotional wound? Is this emotion came from emotional abuse or neglect or abandonment? What is it? Because even Sakoni, when you was talking about this, when you talk about the wounds, even the wounds are being in the foster care program, that a lot of times they're not assessed there, and they're going, and children, come on now, children in their imagination, like, what's wrong with me? Why did my, so they get wounded just by questioning, even in themselves. Think about it. Think about most people's self-talk. A lot of times people's self-talk is very cutting. Yeah. It's very judgmental. Yes. When people listen to the podcast, they already form a judgmental way of thinking, and they already judging. and sometimes they can be very defensive, not knowing
Right.
it's coming from a wound. It's coming
Right.
from no one's listening to me. I didn't have a voice growing up. So now you find a lot of people want to have a voice, but it can be detrimental because they feel like no one's listening to me, all because they were wounded as a child and no one listened to them as a child, especially if they have been sexually molested or anything by a family member, anything of that nature, and nobody would listen to them. So that wound now is never healed.
Mm.
That wound has now became more traumatic, and that trauma is difficult to heal because they haven't seen it as trauma.
And
So
that's really,
go ahead.
well, yeah, man, that's really what I wanted to kind of, I guess, in fact, distinguish in fact, between the wound and the trauma, because, in fact, for me, trauma is like, this is between a test and a trial. A test is like an isolated event, but a trial goes on. And so, in my layman's terms, a wound is an event, but for something that's traumatic, it keeps happening. Even if the even if it only happened one time in their mind, they keep living it over and over. So they keep re-traumatizing themselves, because of it.
And so that's when you're reading the book, The Body Keeps Score. Some people get stuck in their trauma. And
Mm,
it's because of the fact they're stuck in it. It's constantly replaying in their mind. The solution to it is the whole solution to trauma is self-compassion. Um, in digging deeper into self-compassion, like I like to do self-compassion from a biblical perspective. Um,
okay.
and if you ask yourself what it means to be compassionate towards yourself when no one else is compassionate towards you. Uh, so there are people get stuck in their trauma and just keep replaying, and so that wound is never healing.
Hmm.
Is because they get stuck in it. And I can't tell you that the truth is, and research shows us that women have more traumatic events happen in life because some go unreported. They just don't tell anybody because of the shame that comes with it.
Right,
And,
right.
and so I don't want to tell nobody I got raped in college because I didn't supposed to have been at that club. I was supposed to have been studying. I told my mom I was going to be studying, and I'm not studying. I'm hanging out with these guys. One of them put date drug, the date drug, and I got raped by it, and I can't remember that. I can't report this because I'm ashamed to admit to my mom. And I wouldn't tell college students, if you get raped, report it. Don't, because it's going to become traumatic later on when you can't stay in relationship or you become hypersexual active. And then you can't turn it off
Yeah.
because you're trying to heal, but your approach to healing is not self-compassion, is risky behaviors. So
Mm, yeah, yeah. Well, so okay, so let's say that you suspect or you see somebody who is dealing with childhood traumas, being on the outside looking in and actually seeing patterns that keep reoccurring. How can you help somebody identify their need for inner child work?
read Sakoni Prince's book Heal.
Tell them to get a copy of the book.
I'm telling you, if I'm serious, you got it in there. Here's the thing. See, I can be, and let's deal with it. I can be ignorant of it. So when I gave the ACE exam to some students to take this test, this 10-question ACE exam, then I had to teach the class like about 2 months later. And I remember one lady said, "You know what? I think I lied on my ACE exam because of shame. I don't think I I don't think I marked it right. I got more trauma than I'm willing to admit."
Wow.
Um, and I think when we talk about this, Sakoni, it can be very touchy subject because it brings up so much pain. I told one client, I said, I just got to say one thing to you. Well, I got to ask you one question. How are you going to handle the pain once it comes up? Because it is addressing. And so looking at the signs and symptoms of it, because I believe there's only two emotions. There's fear and there's love. And sometimes we want to call it love, and we should say, don't call it love. Being codependent and everything else, don't call that love. Don't call trying to take care of everybody and not take care of yourself love. And I think that's self-compassion piece. So Coney, it's sometimes difficult, man. It's being able to help people see when people are getting into a crisis situation. So it has to be early intervention and prevention so that people can start seeing it. I want someone to call me out on it, in which I ignored before. And I was like, I'm not suffering from PTSD. I'm not dealing with depression, in which I was. So.
Right. Well, like when I started on my own personal development journey, again, I started with me. I started asking myself questions. I started trying to understand and unravel my own behavior, which led me to, again, some childhood issues and childhood traumas. And I'm not even ashamed, to say that and actually I'm proud to say that I've gone to therapy. But even before I went to therapy, I started the process of trying to understand because I wanted to make the most of my therapy. I didn't just want to start at ground zero. I really wanted to come in at grade level 7 or something, because I wanted to do enough research. And I even told my therapist, I said, I'm either going to be your worst client or your best one. Because stuff that she gave me to do in between exercises and stuff, I really put them in. I not only did the work, but I did more work, simply because I wasn't just trying to get a grade. I was trying to get better. And even writing this book, even being this vulnerable, I believe is helping somebody else to understand that, listen, I need to do the same thing. I never want to settle for being average. I want to be the best version of myself. I want to be better than I was yesterday. And so, but that takes work, and it takes hard work. It takes getting around somebody that's trusted, somebody that that has your best interest in mind, that can really help give you the feedback. And like the Bible talks about how iron sharpens iron, you have to be around individuals that can help you be better. And that's one of the reasons why I love surrounding myself with individuals that can actually call me on my stuff, hold me accountable, but I know that these individuals want the best for me. And that's what makes it all worth it. Now, of course, you have those people that are out there that are haters, and all they're going to do is to try to tear you down. But somebody that really cares about you and really wants you to do better, they are going to check you. And I have a friend of mine in Atlanta. His name is James Hawkins. I told him that I was going to get him a shirt that say "Faithful are the wounds of James Hawkins," because the Bible says "Faithful are the wounds of a friend."
Yeah,
that means if a friend wounds you, it's for a good reason. I told him, I said, I'm going to make that shirt, and all of your friends, I'm going to sell them out, because I know they're going to say, "Yep, James Hawkins, definitely check you. He would check you." But that's because he cares. And so even for us, having people in our lives that can do that we give them permission. And I think a lot of it, the reason that we don't want to open ourselves up to that is because we haven't done it ourselves. Before I got a speaking coach, I had gone as far as I could on my own. I had done commencement speeches. I had spoken at companies, at churches, but yet I realized something was missing. And I tell people all the time, in fact, I become the best student when I come to the end of myself. When I've tried everything that I know how to do, I got my pencil, I got my paper, I'm taking notes, because I've gone as far as I can on my own. So I've surrounded myself with someone who knows more than me, and I'm quiet long enough to learn something. And even with our own mental health, I don't think that we should be a passive participant in it. I think we need to be active. And again, once we've gone as far as we can on our own, that's when we need to get some help. We need to get some counseling, or we need to get a therapist. And that brings us to the fact that again, I have to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsor. So here is our sponsorship from BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable, it is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal or choose Saconi Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Now, there used to be a time when people had a stigma about going to therapists, going to counseling, but now you can do it so discreetly. Again, you can do it from your own home. So, Dr. Dent, in fact, before we wrap this up, I know you and I, we have a prayer breakfast tomorrow.
Yes.
Tomorrow morning in Mobile, Alabama. So for those who are watching in the Mobile area, if you want to come out, I'm actually going to be having copies of my book. I'll be doing a book signing there as well. Awesome. But we are the Mobile chapter of the National Men's Prayer Call, and we're doing a prayer breakfast Saturday, and it's going to be an amazing time. It's a free breakfast, but we are taking up a donation, so bring some money with you or get your Cash App together. And so, but it's going to be an incredible time. So, Dr. Dent, I want you to go a little bit into how or what should somebody expect by coming to the breakfast?
Well, I think first of all, it's the title of Men Healing Men.
Yeah.
And with your book is about what we're doing now is heal. Think about it for a second. Where is the proper place for men to heal each other? I mean, without the distractions, where men can be vulnerable and be healed. Being in this arena for as long as I have watched men not feeling safe even around other men, not want to be vulnerable around other men. And I remember doing this conference in Tennessee, and we had men really starting to open up and be healed. It's when we can heal. I mean, without the distractions of anyone else, no distractions, no cell phones, nothing, that we can get in the presence of God, in the presence of each other and be healed. I think it's, I think we have this competitive spirit in us that needs to turn around and stop being competitive and collaborate with each other, so that we can heal each other. Let me say something, Saconi, like when you talk about therapy, and I tell people, you're not healed in the clinic, you healed in your community. And if your community doesn't provide you the support and the resources you need, you might struggle being healed. And it's just because you think about it. And I tell people, and I share this with people, especially people who have experienced some kind of traumatic event. What is it? Where's your support? For example, when you stick that key in your door, you're getting ready to go home. You stick that key in the door. What's on the other side of that door? Is it safe? Is it a place where you can be vulnerable? You can be naked and not ashamed and really, really relax. And a lot of times people stick that key in that door. They know exactly what's on the other side of it. It's a place where they cannot exhale. They cannot breathe. They are choked out by everything because they don't have a safe place. Maslow talked about this, that we need safety. We need that connection. We need the relationship.
Right.
And I say this so often because I learned this from my mentor, Dr. George McCaleb, that relationship should be the number one priority of any ministry. Our relationship with God, our relationship with each other, our members to members, pastors to members, members to pastor, and church to the community. It's all about relationships. And I think when we have these healthy relationships, not only we can heal each other, but we can start healing our family and heal our community. So I think it's going to be really, really good when we really just really have a heart to heal.
Right. So I know that the prayer breakfast tomorrow is going to be a safe space. And not only are we just saying that, but we're going to announce it and make sure, in fact, that it is. And it's in an environment like that, to where people can open up and people can share. I think women do it easier than men do. And so it's always a challenge and a struggle for us. But if we create the environment, healing can happen. And that's one of the things we're going to be talking about. I'm going to be doing a like little mini keynote there, talking about heal and talking about my book and some of the aspects that we deal with as men and how to address those, how to identify and find individuals that can help you,
Right.
and it's not an overnight thing, because everybody can't handle what it is you're dealing with. So you have to build those relationships. And I remember this one man saying that make a friend before you need a friend, because the time you need one is the wrong time to try to make one.
Yeah.
And so we have to build relationships, and they can't just be one side. You can't just always be dumping on somebody or they always dumping on you. But there has to be that rapport that's built over time, that safety that's built over time, to where you can share more and more of your struggles and you can get the help that you need. And again, it has to be two-way. It can't just be one way. It has to be reciprocal, because without that, you're just burdening somebody. But we have to be there to carry. It's like the song, Lean on Me. We all need somebody to lean on, because one day I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be the one that needs somebody to lean on. And if I pushed you away, will you need somebody to lean on? Who's going to be there for me?
Yeah, so let's say tomorrow the prayer breakfast starts at 9. It's at Innovation Portal downtown at 358 St. Louis Street here in Mobile, Alabama. So if you come in, it starts at 9, and I believe in starting on time. So we're going to get there early. But I definitely believe in starting on time. I despise it. That's my little pet peeve from being in the Marine Corps. Let's start on time, and so we can end on time. So we will start at 9. And my grace period is 9:01, not 9:05. It's 9:01, because I remember I told the first sergeant, he closed the gate. I was late. I got there at 8:00. He closed the gate at 8:00, and I told him, I said, listen, first sergeant, 8:00 stays 8:00 at least 1 minute. You can close this gate at 8:01. He couldn't stand me, Saccone. I told him, I said, you can close it at 8:01 because 8 stays 8:00 for at least 1 minute.
1 minute. And there you go. There you go.
And I told him, I said, close the gate at 8:01, not 8:00.
Yeah.
8:01.
But Dr. Dent, in fact, before we get out of here, I do want people to have an opportunity, in fact, to be able to follow you, connect with you. So is there any way that they can stay connected with you via your any kind of social media or emails or?
Well, yeah, they can connect. They can go to Dent Enterprises, dententerprisesinc.com, and they can look on our website, and you can see me there. You can also look at our Max Out Coaching Therapy Services. You can look at all that. You can book an appointment with me on Dent Enterprises. You can follow me on Monday morning. I do my Monday morning coffee. I love my Monday morning coffee. I like to talk about stuff on. Yeah, I really, because people do Mondays so wrong, so wrong. Just
Are you gonna talk about the eclipse coming up?
Yeah,
Monday?
I'm like, God, yeah. You know what I told somebody? This is my theory. And this is Dent. When I say Dent, I said that's why I believe Easter is off. They said, what you mean? Because I believe, this is Dent now, I believe that the eclipse happened on Easter. They said, what you mean? I said, because I think when the centurion said, surely this was the Son of God, I believe that sun blocked out the other sun to cause the eclipse, so that there was darkness on the earth to reveal my son. The glory was on the cross. That's why I believe the centurion said, surely this was the Son of God. That's why I told somebody, my theory, this, people do have theories, right? My theory is that. Now, Sakona, let me say this one last piece. And I'm trying to practice not having the last word. So just don't practice that. So here's the thing. I think when we as a people, and I was looking at an old clips from the Cosby Show when they had B.B. King on there. He was playing the blues. And he said, play this. And then we at the church and play our music in church. Then we'll sneak down to somebody's house. And this is what we'll be playing. Because the church basically gave us our identity as a people. It gave us our identity. And that's why when I talked to my father-in-law about when they start taking off the suit, I said, you got to remember, Black men didn't have white-collar jobs. They had blue-collar jobs. Right. They worked in fields and everything. So when they came to church, they put on their suits because that's the only place they can wear a suit. And so these older men struggle with taking the suit off because it gave them their identity. It gave them something. So the church meant, the gospel means this. The blues gave us our voice back, but the gospel told us you're not in this alone. And I think when we talk about men healing men, we need to let them know you're not alone. You're not in this by yourself. You can connect with other men. You can get connected because you're not alone. The gospel message was designed to teach us you're not alone.
Right. With Dr. Dent, I look forward to us hooking up tomorrow to actually have that prayer breakfast. I know it's going to be a phenomenal time. And for those, again, that are in the Mobile area and you want to come out and join us, we invite you. It's going to be at the Innovation Portal. The address is with
358 St. Louis Street.
358 St. Louis Street, downtown Mobile. You can't miss the building because coming up on it, you'll see where it says Innovation Portal. But just in fact, put it in your GPS, and in fact, we'll see you there in the morning. Dr. Dent, listen, I want to thank you again for being on the H.E.A.L podcast, and I'm definitely going to have you back, especially when your book comes out. I'm telling you, if you haven't found anybody to follow, anybody that has just a wealth of wisdom, Dr. Charles Dent is that person. So, Dr. Dent, again, thank you so much. And with that being said, I'm going to actually be closing this out, but I want to say thank you for tuning in.
Well, my name is Sakoni Prince of SakoniPrince.com, where we make motivation personal by introducing you to yourself. I'm a motivational speaker, a trainer, and a coach. I'm also an author. I help people in the area of personal development and leadership development because I believe that you can't lead others until you learn how to lead yourself. But once you learn how to lead yourself, the next logical step is that you lead other people.
Sakoni Prince is the best keynote I've ever seen.
He really encouraged me so much.
He has this ability of seeing in people what they don't see in themselves.
He was so confident. When he was coming to the stage, you could see like, wow, this is a lion.
Any actor that's going for a role, they do a case study. If I'm going to be a fry cook, I go to a restaurant and watch people that are fry cooks. If I'm going to be a mob boss, I go and, well, maybe not go to with a mob, but you take some notes as to what they do. Our children are watching us. What can they reference when they step into our shoes?
I do what I do because I believe that people have truly yet to understand their purpose. Once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. But until you know who you are, anything can. So my goal is to really help people to understand their purpose and their calling. And oftentimes they have the answers themselves, but they're not asking the right questions. So I help people to get to that place to where they look at themselves, they step back and they see how they've been a help to those around them and what really drives them. And from that, they really understand the value of it. They learn to value their value and see what value their value brings. Because a lot of people, they have yet to do that.
Until you know who you are,
until you know who you are, anything can stop you. But once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. I want you to understand that you are blessed. That you are blessed to be a blessing. That there is somebody looking up to you. They're looking at you. Don't ever forget that. Because if you ever do, you're going to leave them without a mark.
I've learned so much, and I've experienced a lot of interactions with people.
The practical approach, like you can't just sit down there, you have to walk up to an opportunity. Sometimes you have to grab the opportunity. Sometimes you have to fight for the opportunity. There's so much life lessons.
I think from today onwards, I'll stretch out and reach to higher levels.